Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Covering both sides of the big issues with the analysis you trust on Newsradio 1040 WHO.
The conversation in the nation over race has transitioned into a conversation over policing and suggestions of police reform. But what's a good idea? What's not a good idea? What's an emotional reaction in the moment that we need to step back from? Let's talk to Dr. Alex Del Carmen. He heads up the School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University, and he's the author of the soon-to-be-released book, Racial Profiling in Policing, Beyond the Basics. So, Dr. Del Carmen, you're hearing the ideas being floated around the nation. Are there some reform ideas that you say make sense?
Sure, and obviously de-escalation techniques, anything that has to do with training, gathering data, analyzing data. I mean, those are things that we know that work. We know that they actually gather information and allow us social scientists to figure out a better way to police. I mean, there's no question that there are really good things out there that police officers can do in the course of the next 20, 30 years.
Dr. Del Carmen, one of the things that's being talked about is restraint techniques that are at the neck or the head, and obviously that's a reaction to the George Floyd video. Is that something, I don't want to handcuff our police officers, but is that something you think people are ready to adopt, banning chokeholds?
I think in most jurisdictions, they probably are, given the public attention to the issue now. But I will tell you that if you look back at a couple of years ago, the U.S. Department of Justice actually did several studies, and they concluded that anytime you place a suspect, for instance, with, and restrain that suspect with their head facing the ground, on the ground, that simply that is a dangerous technique that oftentimes results in the death of that person. So we have data already that does show that chokeholds and various other things are dangerous, particularly because people are, some people are under medication, other people have, secondary and tertiary medical issues. And so police officers have no way of knowing that when they apprehend the suspect. Therefore, it's important to be cognizant of that.
Dr. Del Carmen, I said that you are the author of a soon-to-be-released book called Racial Profiling in Policing, and the city of Des Moines right now is in the middle of a really heated debate over a racial profiling ordinance. Is there a way a city can get that done that is helpful to the community and also helpful to the police?
Absolutely. Like here in Texas, for instance, for the past, almost 18 years, the state actually is regulating and has required for police agencies to report data specific to motor vehicle contacts, specific to searches, to the outcome of those searches. And so we've been analyzing that data, and it's quite helpful, actually, because it allows police departments to, not only implement their policies, but also be able to train police officers that racial profiling can be, in fact, be denied and hopefully prevented. So I would encourage them to look at other models across the United States.
And Dr. Del Carmen, obviously the politicians are involved, and they're going to argue over the proposal of defunding the police. But then there's a lot of confusion over what that means. Has there been communities that have had some kind of alternative programs to policing, or they answer calls in a different way rather than just the police? But is there a way to look in a new way at policing without actually withdrawing funding from our police force?
Right. So, if you look across the European continent, right, so there are various models out there, but people are different, and there's different cultures and different levels of expectations as to the sort of things that, they expect from their police officers. But I will tell you, look, we have to be very careful in how we proceed in the next 20 and 30 years. And what that means is we have to do this cerebrally, and we have to do this based on science. Let this not be an emotional reaction to something horrible that happened in Minneapolis. And no one denies that Mr. Floyd should still be alive, and that what happened to him is absolutely horrible and does not represent law enforcement. But let's pause, let's reflect, let's look at the science, and let's do things in a disciplined, coherent manner.
Yeah, I'm glad you are saying that, because I am worried, being pro-police as I am, I understand that there's areas of reform, but in the emotion of the moment, to quite simply put it, I don't want us to do anything dumb. And so are there some things out there, Dr. Del Carmen, that worry you as a person that trains police officers?
Absolutely. Look, if you look across, some of the rhetoric being discussed right now to actually defund the police. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but if it actually means to take away dollars from police officers that they could use in various things that are being utilized now to protect their lives and the lives of others. And then there's also been conversations about actually annihilating police. I mean, just absolutely closing down police departments across the United States. And what are you going to do instead of that, right? So what kind of service are you going to provide? What's going to happen when somebody breaks into your home and you pick up the phone and you call 911? Who do you expect to show up at your front door? Do you expect for that person to be someone armed with a badge, with training behind them, or do you expect them to show up, perhaps with a license to counsel someone because they don't have the money or the ability to purchase a gun and protect your life? I mean, I'd rather have the former than the latter.
Absolutely. As I said, you're coming out with a book about racial profiling, Dr. Del Carmen, and what is the message a police department can send to people in a community that feel like they're being targeted by the police or they're being treated unfairly by the police? What's the ultimate outcome that can come out of all of this when a police department is trying to eliminate racial profiling?
Well, the elimination of racial profiling is a process, right? It's not an event, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen just overnight. And it does require for good police leadership to look inwards, to have the courage to basically say, no, and I'll tell you, the one thing that we need to do better in policing across the United States is to promote the idea of accountability. Many police departments across the U.S. have wonderful policies, and they have best practices, and they get all these wonderful awards and certifications. But at the end of the day, it's what you do with that information that matters, right? Mm-hmm. To have it on a desk that says you have the best policy in policing means very little if you're not willing and able to apply it and enforce it across the board among your police officers. So I would argue that this is the time to have a conversation, to listen to the community, and to engage the community in a proactive manner.
Absolutely. Dr. Alex Del Carmen, he heads up the School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University, and his upcoming book is Racial Profiling and Policing Beyond the Basics. Dr. Del Carmen, I was really pleased to get the time with you today because I knew you were the person to talk to about this. Thanks very much for joining me.